The rainy season had struck Kenya's Amboseli Reserve, turning familiar trails into treacherous water traps. Michael, an experienced park ranger, and his partner, Alex, sped along the washed-out road in their battered Jeep. The radio crackled with interference, but the message was clear enough. A young elephant was in trouble near the eastern border of the reserve. Repeat the location. Michael pressed the earpiece closer, straining to make out the words through the relentless downpour drumming against the car's roof. Taveta River, where it overflowed after yesterday's storm, came the ranger's shaky voice. The calf got separated from the herd and is stuck in the mud. The mother is trying to pull it out, but she might get trapped herself. We need urgent help. Michael glanced at Alex, who gripped the wheel tightly, maneuvering between deep puddles. How bad is it? Alex asked, keeping his eyes fixed on the blurred road ahead. Bad enough to hurry. 2 hours in this mud could be dangerous for the little one. The Jeep bounced over the potholes, splashing brown water in all directions. Their visibility was reduced to just a few meters due to the relentless curtain of rain. But even through the downpour, the scene that unfolded as they arrived was breathtaking. A young elephant stood at the edge of the swollen river, her massive legs sinking into the softened earth. She trumpeted anxiously, stretching out her trunk toward a small figure trapped in the rushing water. The calf, no more than 5 feet tall, was desperately struggling to free itself from the muddy trap, but every movement only made its situation worse. Its tiny trunk reached upward, letting out weak, pitiful cries. Jesus, Alex muttered, killing the engine. He's almost neck-deep in mud. Michael quickly assessed the situation. The calf looked exhausted, its attempts to escape growing weaker. The mother stood helplessly on the bank, reluctant to wade in further. Her instincts told her that she, too, could become a victim of the deadly quagmire. We need ropes, Michael commanded, pulling a long, sturdy cable from the trunk. And the winch. Alex nodded and jumped out into the downpour. They both knew time was running out. With every passing minute, the calf was losing strength, and the water level was slowly but steadily rising due to the unrelenting rain. We have to be careful, Michael warned, throwing on a waterproof jacket. The mother won't just let us get close. He pulled a small pouch from his pocket, filled with a special blend of herbs and fruits, a scent local rangers use to calm elephants. Moving slowly, Michael began approaching the mother elephant, holding the pouch in front of him. Easy, girl, easy, he murmured. His voice was barely audible over the pounding rain, but the soft, soothing tone carried more weight than the words themselves. The elephant turned her head toward him, lifting her trunk cautiously to sniff the air. Michael kept advancing, careful not to make any sudden movements. For several agonizing seconds, she studied him before lowering her trunk. Not trust, but a temporary truce. Meanwhile, Alex had secured the winch and rope to the Jeep. How do we reach the little one? He shouted over the roar of the rain. Michael assessed the distance. The calf was about 15 meters from the bank, surrounded by treacherous mud. We'll have to go in, he said, testing the rope's strength. But I'm not sure we can tie it up without hurting it. Suddenly, the situation took a turn for the worse. A section of the riverbank beneath the mother elephant began to give way. She let out a distressed trumpet and took a step back. The calf responded with a weak cry, instinctively trying to move toward its mother, but the effort only made it sink deeper. We have to act now, Michael shouted, grabbing the rope and wading cautiously into the murky water. Alex kept a close eye on the mother, ready to intervene if she decided Michael was a threat to her baby. But she seemed to understand their intent. Though restless, shifting her weight from foot to foot, she showed no aggression. The water quickly reached Michael's waist. Every step was a struggle. The riverbed was uneven and dangerously slick. In some spots, his boots sank knee-deep into the silt. Easy, little one, easy, he murmured as he neared the calf. We're here to help. The exhausted and frightened calf no longer resisted. Its large, expressive eyes watched Michael's approach with wary curiosity. Now up close, Michael could see just how dire the situation was. The calf was submerged in thick mud almost to its ears, with only its head and a small portion of its back still visible. Gently, Michael reached out and touched its wet skin. The calf flinched, but didn't pull away. Good boy, Michael murmured as he carefully threaded the rope under the calf's belly. The task was incredibly difficult. The thick mud created strong resistance, and the rope had to be positioned in a way that wouldn't injure the elephant when pulled. After several exhausting minutes of struggling with the sticky sludge, Michael finally shouted, "The rope is secured!" "Start pulling. Slowly." Alex activated the winch and the rope began to tighten. The calf let out a frightened trumpet as it felt the tension, and its mother responded with a loud, anxious cry, stepping closer to the water. "Stop!" Michael commanded, holding up his hand in a universal halt gesture, one that experienced rangers used when working with elephants. Amazingly, she obeyed, though her massive body trembled with tension. The calf started to rise, but the mud clung to it stubbornly, reluctant to release its grip. The winch groaned under the strain. "I'm not sure we can pull him out with just the winch," Alex shouted over the rain. "He's stuck too deep." Michael scanned the surroundings for a solution. There was no time to waste. The calf was on the verge of exhaustion. "Give it full power. I'll try to push him from behind." Risking getting stuck himself, Michael began digging around the calf's hind legs, creating space for movement. Cold, slimy mud seeped into his clothes, but he ignored it. Slowly, the calf's legs started to gain some freedom as the winch continued pulling. Suddenly, the young elephant let out a loud, almost sob-like sound and lunged forward. That final burst of effort, combined with the winch's force and Michael's push, finally made a difference. The calf shifted. Alex increased the power, and after several agonizing minutes, the animal slowly began to emerge onto firmer ground. Its body was covered in thick mud, its legs trembled with exhaustion, but there was a new spark of life in its eyes. As soon as the calf was a safe distance from the quicksand, Michael unhooked the rope and stepped back. The mother elephant immediately rushed to her baby, wrapping her trunk around him as if embracing him. Their trunks intertwined in a touching reunion. Completely drained and covered in mud from head to toe, Michael trudged back to the riverbank. Alex reached out and pulled him free from the thick sludge with a strong grip. "You good?" he asked, handing Michael a bottle of water. Michael nodded and took a deep, grateful drink. "Now we need to make sure the little guy's okay." They retrieved the medical kit from the jeep. It contained not only standard supplies but also special treatments for wildlife: antiseptics, vitamin boosters, and energy supplements. Michael observed the calf from a distance with an expert eye. The animal looked exhausted but showed no signs of serious injuries. "I need to give him a strengthening injection," Michael said, preparing a syringe with a long needle. He was in cold water for too long. His body is weakened. Approaching the recently rescued calf and its protective mother was a challenge of its own. But years of working with elephants had taught Michael the right approach. He moved slowly, speaking in a low, reassuring voice, making sure the mother could see every action he took. Surprisingly, the mother seemed to understand his intentions. She took a step back, allowing the man to approach her calf. Michael quickly and carefully administered the injection, then treated a few small abrasions on the baby elephant's skin with antiseptic. The rain gradually subsided, turning into a light drizzle. Through the breaks in the clouds, the first rays of sunlight began to pierce through, reflecting in the puddles and creating an almost mystical atmosphere. "I think they'll be fine," Alex said, watching as the elephant gently nudged her baby away from the danger zone. "Look at that. She's leading him to solid ground." Michael nodded, feeling the tension of the past few hours finally begin to ease. The mother elephant was indeed guiding her calf along a safe path, as if she instinctively knew where the firm ground was. Their movements were slow. The little one was still weak, but steady. Before disappearing into the acacia thickets, the elephant stopped and turned her head toward the humans. Then she raised her trunk and let out a deep, vibrating sound. Not threatening, but something special, something Michael had never heard before. "She's thanking us," Alex said quietly, a note of reverence in his voice. Michael wasn't sure if elephants could feel gratitude the way humans did, but at that moment, he was ready to believe it. There was something in the way she looked at them, in that distinct sound she made, that made him think an unseen connection had formed between them. They stood watching until the mother and her calf disappeared from sight, taking with them the mud, the exhaustion, and the memory of human kindness. Only then did Michael allow himself to sit down on the ground, feeling his own legs trembling from the strain of the ordeal. "We need to report back to the center," Alex reminded him, helping Michael to his feet. "And check if the rest of the herd has strayed too far." Michael nodded, struggling to stand. The day had already been long, yet it was only just beginning. 3 months had passed since that unforgettable day when Michael and Alex had saved the baby elephant from a deadly trap. The rainy season had given way to the hot, dry months when the vegetation gradually turned yellow under the relentless African sun, and animals increasingly gathered around the few remaining waterholes that had yet to dry up. The morning began like any other. Michael woke before dawn in his small hut on the grounds of the Savannah Research Station. The sounds of the awakening wilderness drifted through the open windows. The distant roar of a lion, the chirping of countless birds, the whisper of the wind through the tall grass. He stretched, greeting another day in this wild, beautiful world that had been his home for many years. After a quick breakfast and a strong cup of tea, Michael headed toward the station's main building. Alex was already there, checking the equipment for today's patrol. "Good morning," Alex greeted him, handing over a map. "Today we need to check the eastern sector. The rangers reported signs of poachers near the Makome watering hole." Michael frowned. Despite all the efforts to protect the reserve, poachers still managed to slip in, hunting elephants for their ivory and rhinos for their horns. After loading the necessary equipment into the jeep, they set off from the camp. The morning air was still cool, but Michael knew that by midday the heat would become almost unbearable. The road was dry and dusty, with patches of sand filling the tire tracks, slowing their progress. They passed a herd of zebras lazily grazing in the morning chill, unfazed by the passing vehicle. In the distance, a few giraffes stood out against the sky, their long necks resembling strange, towering trees. "Look," Alex suddenly said, pointing to the side. "Elephants." Michael followed his gaze. A small herd, about 10 individuals, was slowly making its way toward one of the few remaining waterholes. Leading them was a large female, likely the matriarch. Behind her followed other adult females and several young elephants of varying ages. "Let's take a closer look," Michael suggested. "Looks like they have some calves with them." Alex nodded in agreement and turned off the main road, steering the jeep toward the herd. They stopped at a respectful distance, careful not to disturb the animals. Michael pulled out his binoculars and began observing each elephant closely. "See anything interesting?" Alex asked, cutting the engine. Michael didn't answer right away. His gaze was fixed on a young elephant that was playfully wrapping its trunk around the leg of one of the adult females. "I'm not sure, but—" Michael squinted, trying to make out distinctive features. "I think that might be the calf we rescued in the spring." He handed the binoculars to Alex, pointing out the specific elephant. "Look, there's a small scar near its left ear, and the shape of its trunk. It's unique. I remember noticing it when I was treating its wounds." Alex studied the elephant for a long moment before nodding slowly. "You're right. It's him. And he looks like he's doing just fine." There was a note of satisfaction in his voice that mirrored Michael's own feelings. Seeing an animal they had saved from certain death now healthy and safe with its family, it was a special kind of reward, one that made all the hardships of their work worthwhile. "Let's take a few pictures for the report," Michael suggested, reaching for his camera with the long lens. He began photographing the herd, paying particular attention to the young elephant's behavior. Over the past few months, the calf had grown noticeably stronger. Back on that rainy day, he had barely reached his mother's belly, but now he stood taller and more robust. His skin had a healthy gray hue, and his movements were confident and energetic. "Just look at how strong he's become," Alex remarked with a smile. "Hard to believe this is the same creature we pulled out of the mud." Michael nodded, his eyes still fixed on the viewfinder. Suddenly, something caught his attention. The herd's matriarch raised her trunk, sniffing the air, then let out a deep sound, one that Michael immediately recognized as an alarm call. The other adult elephants quickly closed ranks around the young ones, forming a protective circle. Something's wrong, Michael said tensely, lowering the camera and grabbing his binoculars again. They've sensed something. Alex stiffened, scanning the surroundings. Could be predators? Lions or hyenas? Michael shook his head. Doesn't seem like it. If it were predators, they'd be reacting differently. This is something else. Just then, a loud crackling noise came from the nearby thicket, and Michael's heart clenched. A glint of metal flashed between the trees. A trap. Poachers, he exhaled. They're after the herd. Alex quickly started the engine, and the jeep surged forward. Their plan was simple and dangerous. Scare off the poachers before they could harm the elephants, even if it meant putting themselves at risk. Noticing the vehicle's movement, the elephants began retreating, picking up their pace. The matriarch let out a powerful trumpet call, urging the herd to flee. Michael spotted their rescued calf running alongside his mother, his small legs moving with surprising speed. The jeep tore through the undergrowth. There, hidden among the trees, were two men, clearly unprepared to be discovered so quickly. "Stop right there!" Michael shouted, jumping out of the vehicle. The poachers hesitated, caught off guard. A tense moment of silence stretched between them. Then, the man with a scar slowly raised his hands. His partner followed suit. "You are under arrest for trespassing in a protected reserve and attempted poaching," Michael declared, pulling a pair of plastic handcuffs from his pocket, the kind all rangers carried with them. After securing the poachers, Michael and Alex loaded them into the back of the jeep, ready to transport them to the nearest police station. But before leaving, Michael took one last look around, searching for the elephant herd. They had retreated to a safe distance, but hadn't fled entirely. It seemed the matriarch had decided the danger had passed. The elephants had gathered around a small grove of acacia trees, standing protectively around their young. "Do you think they realize we just saved them?" Alex asked thoughtfully, watching the majestic animals. Michael shrugged. "Who knows? Elephants are incredibly intelligent creatures, and they have excellent memory. Maybe they can tell the difference between those who want to harm them and those trying to help." They loaded the confiscated weapons into the jeep and prepared to leave. But just as Michael climbed into the driver's seat, he noticed movement in the herd. Their rescued calf had stepped slightly forward, raising its trunk as if sniffing the air, or greeting them. "Look at that," Michael said quietly, pointing at the young elephant. "It seems like he recognizes us." Alex shook his head skeptically. "That's just a coincidence. How would he know it was us who saved him months ago?" But something about the calf's behavior made Michael hesitate. The young elephant stood there, watching them, showing none of the usual fear wild elephants had toward humans. After a few moments, the calf turned back to his mother, and the herd slowly resumed their journey toward the watering hole. "Maybe you're right," Michael admitted, though a small voice in the back of his mind told him otherwise. "Let's go. We need to get these guys to the station." As they drove back to the station, Michael couldn't stop thinking about the strange encounter. He had worked with wild animals for most of his life, and knew they had far more complex inner worlds than people often assumed. Especially elephants, with their strong social bonds, long memories, and even the ability to mourn their dead. What if the calf really had recognized them? What if, somewhere in its mind, it still carried the memory of the humans who had once pulled it from a deadly trap? The thought was both thrilling and slightly unsettling. In the back seat, the poachers remained silent, occasionally whispering to each other in their local dialect. Michael understood enough to catch the general meaning. They were talking about the high prices for ivory on the black market, and speculating about what awaited them in prison. "Do you realize you're killing rare animals for nothing but a piece of bone?" Michael finally snapped, turning to face them. "There are fewer and fewer of these elephants every year." The man with the scar simply shrugged. "My family has to eat something. For one tusk I can feed them for a year." Michael wanted to reply, but realized the pointlessness of the argument. The poaching problem was too complex. One ranger could not change the system, but he could protect specific animals. On the road, Michael kept thinking about the elephant. When the jeep turned to the guard post, where Michael's colleagues and the police were waiting, the elephant suddenly reappeared on the road. He came out of the thicket and stood right in front of the car, ears spread and trunk raised. He opened the door, got out slowly, and stepped toward the elephant. The elephant looked at him, as if remembering something. Then he quietly reached for his hand with his trunk. "Did you really recognize me?" Michael exhaled. The elephant snorted and suddenly rubbed his shoulder, lightly, carefully, but with obvious trust. This touching moment is a symbol of the truest friendship between man and animal. While some, in the pursuit of money, were destroying the connection with nature the rangers were building. Such people are worthy of respect,